January 2nd, 2024. Live streaming from a distant galaxy. This is the world's most controversial podcast, the Doomsy McDoomscroller Show, a philosophical science fiction series featuring realistic futurology and refreshingly heretical commentary on the news. The news today, we have this headline here. This is from NBC Universal. Off Yahoo News. Headline here says, risk of wider war is, quote, certainly the aftermath of this strike, unquote. Killing Hamas official, Stavridis says. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that guy's name right. Stavridis. And then there's a picture of a guy with a suit and a tie. He's blabbing. He's got a globe behind him. Though Israel has not taken responsibility for the strike in Lebanon that killed a Hamas official, there are rising tensions in Iraq, Iran, and Syria that threaten escalation of a wider war, says retired Admiral and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander James Stavridis. Okay, well, I guess he would know, right? I mean, he's got the credentials. But, I mean, is this guy really going out on a limb here? You know, predicting wider war, a risk of wider war. I mean, guy's not really going out on a limb there. I mean, just say there's going to be wider war. Why not just say that? You know it's going to happen. You know it's true. You know it will be what this guy's predicting, wider war. Because that's what your culture does. That's what y'all do. 8 billion warmongers. Yeah. You know, y'all have wars so big, so huge, that you name them after the entire world. And you serialize them. They're serialized. That's how into warmongering your culture is. Of course, by your culture, I'm talking civilized, with a capital C, civilized culture. All 8 billion of you. All 8 billion. Risk of wider war. Oh, whoa. Big whoop. Tell us something we don't know. There's always the risk of a wider war with you civilized folk. Always. 12,000 years of war. No, risk of wider war. I mean, of course. Of course. It's constant, never-ending war with you civilized people. And if you aren't waging war versus each other, you always got the fallback war campaign, which is the one versus Earth. You know, don't forget that, because that's just continual. You're always engaging in that war, always waging those battles. I mean, how else are you going to get to a point where it's not a question of if, but when there will be more plastic than fish in the ocean? The only way you get there, the only way you can accomplish extinction. I don't know. Is that really an accomplishment? Maybe that's the wrong word for it. I mean, who would want to do that? But the only way to do that, the only way to get rid of like all of the polar bears, all of the penguins, but coral, plankton, to make those disappear from Earth, you got to wage war. You have to be part of a culture that's waging war versus Earth constantly trying to conquer the planet. That's civilized culture. It's almost mind-blowing how powerful mythology is, in that it can make so many of you people, you civilized people, think that the name for your culture is like something hallowed, something beyond reproach. I mean, what's the ultimate insult of for a society, or what do you call a person who, I mean, you really just have no respect for, right? They are not civilized. They're uncivilized, right? Those are the worst people. It's incredible, the power of your culture's mythology to make you think that civilized is something good, when all the evidence around you is telling you that it's something bad. Okay, well, all right, let's not use that word. Okay, let's not use bad or wrong. Let's not use these value judgments, these things that could be considered an opinion or something like that. Let's just say all the evidence points to your culture being not wrong, not bad, but unsustainable. Most certainly that. It's not going to go on for much longer. It's coming to a close. It was canceled when it started in the Fertile Crescent. Mother Nature canceled it. Canceled your culture. And the cancellation is just getting around to the cancellation. You think, well, it's pretty old culture, but come on. What, modern humans been around for 300,000 years. 10,000 years of warmongering. Maybe a dozen thousand, if you want to really go back to I think if you want to go back as far as the ideology of civilized culture, maybe a dozen thousand years, and then 10,000 years for, really getting infrastructure for civilized culture going. And by infrastructure, I mean the methods of subjugation. That's what you should be looking at. These economists. God, I have to listen to one more economist talk about the means of production. Means of production. That has anything to do with anything. Who cares? You think a penguin cares about the means with which you produce something? Or they care about the methods of warfare? versus Earth. The subjugation of Earth. Look, it's written in your culture's most famous legends and stories. Stories that were told, started to be told, after your culture got going. Have dominion. You know, you're a people who are intent on subduing the planet. You were described. So let's see. Murder victims described your culture. And the survivors, families of like mass murders of the mass murderers and those who were murdered and then conquered. Everywhere civilized culture has gone, it's introduced genocide and slavery to the region. Whatever area, wherever farmers have spread. Farmer, that's just another word for Holy War agriculturalists. 10,000 years of Holy War. 10,000 years of genocide and slavery. So, this guy saying, oh, killed the Hamas guy. And certainly, the world's better off without this Hamas guy. I mean, no doubt about that. Or wouldn't the world be better off without all the Hamas? But why are you dealing with that? Because that's your culture. Force everybody to live the exact same lifestyle. Right? You all get your calories by way of Holy War agriculture. You all got to go to work to get that food. It's locked up in the warehouses and the stores, and all the food, all the land, everything is under ownership in your culture. You know, all this competition, everybody competing the same way. And the only way you can get security in your life, to get more security, is to gain some altitude on the socio-economic hierarchy. And of course, Doomsy, what are you talking about? Of course, that's just life. No, it's not life. It's not life. That's your culture. It isn't necessarily a requirement of life. You know, you could say violence is like part of life. Loss, violence, yeah. For sure. I mean, if a bird eating a bug can be considered violent, a cheetah chasing down a gazelle could be considered violent. If a couple Homo sapiens get into a physical altercation, yeah, violence. That's just competition on Earth, throughout the universe, from what I can tell. But war, that's your culture. That's civilized living. War. That's one of the fundamental characteristics of civilized culture. Yet somehow, civilized. You know what? it's the only way to live, right? Somehow it's like, civilized culture must be continued, right, no matter the cost. Civilization goes on, or humanity doesn't. That's how you guys make it. And you don't have evidence for that. Anything you think is good about, I mean, what civilized culture is why you're in the mess you're in right now. It just is. Risk of wider war. Risk of wider war. Yeah. Pretty much every day. Risk of wider war. That's what civilized culture does every day. Like, oh my gosh, what is that comedian? Oh, Jim Gaffigan. He talks about, what are we going to do for Thanksgiving? Well, why don't we just eat a lot? He said, well, we do that every day. Right? I mean, risk of wider war. That's every day. Every day for you guys. So that's kind of what Doomsy's talking about with regard to realistic futurology. Is civilized culture not going to continue? Why would the next generations want anything to do with fostering pharaohs and waging war constantly? What's going to be the appeal? Oh, for progress, right? What, a colony on Mars? It's ridiculous. So, risk of wider war. So, maybe there's going to be a daily Doomsy show. 'Cause I catch something like this. That's what pops in my head. I gotta complain. Even to no one who's listening. Right? It's just, I'm decades away. Light decades, not light years. I'm light decades. I mean, beyond that even. I'm light millennia. Millions of those. I'm in some galaxy. I don't know where. But it's likely going to take me a long time. Unless I get lucky with one of these quantum entanglement jumps. It's going to take me a long time to get back to Earth. And I do want to get back to Earth. I just hope, there's people there by the time I get back. Or there's a future for humanity. Because oftentimes it looks like there's not. And I don't know what to do. Do I jump out of this universe into another parallel universe and see? My tech, my ship, it's not in tip-top shape. And fuel for the kind of travel I need to do across the multiverse, it's not easy to come by. That's even if I can get the engine working. So I kind of want to know, do I bail on this universe so I can go to another universe where there's an Earth that there's a better chance of the species to which I belong not going extinct in the next century? Jeez Louise. Risk of wider war. Of course there's risk of wider. That's every day, every hour. And look, you already got pretty much worldwide war as it is. Do we even really got to make these extinctions or extinctions? Yeah, that is the point in question. Are you going extinct? But I meant to say, do we even got to make these distinctions? I guess you guys do so much killing. You do so much warmongering and just mass destruction and just it makes sense that there's a difference between death by terrorism and death by collateral damage. Okay, Doomsy understands that. I know y'all understand that, right? And you can argue about what's a terroristic act and what's collateral damage. But look, the fact that you can have those arguments, that it's reasonable to have those arguments, that it's almost like the politics compels y'all to have those arguments. That's an indictment of civilized culture. Right? Only civilized people argue about, was that death by terrorist act or was that death by collateral damage? Because if you look at the history of humanity, it goes back almost not quite, more than 250,000 years, about 300,000 years. Homo sapiens, the anatomically modern human beings, Homo sapiens, modern humans, people, like the latest and the greatest people. I've just creatures that you'd say, oh, those are people. Maybe not Homo sapiens, but people. That goes back a couple million years on Earth. But let's just go with the anatomically modern humans, those people, Homo sapiens. 300,000 years before civilized culture. And because people don't live without culture, you humans had culture, diverse cultures. I should emphasize cultures. Diverse cultures for 300,000 years. Yeah. And, there was violence during those 300,000 years. No doubt there were killings. People died in fights, even battles. It was competition amongst creatures of Earth. So that was going on. But you know what else was going on for the 300,000 years? Before civilized culture, before civilized, this thing you think is just so great, it means what? Neighborly, what? Friendly, maybe even polite or something. It's got some highfalutin reputation or connotation to this word, civilized, that it doesn't deserve. You only think highly of civilized culture because you're a part of it. That's the mythology compels you to think that. But there's nothing great about it. In fact, it sucks. Doomsy ain't gonna sugarcoat it. All right? Your culture sucks. It's the worst culture ever on planet Earth. Civilized culture. It is. Now, and that's because, look, Culture is not what people have. Culture is what people do. And what do you civilized people do? You wage war versus Earth, versus each other, constantly. And you do it all because of this delusion of grandeur that ancient folks had. Some arrogant, misogynistic ignoramuses in the Fertile Crescent decided that they were of a species meant to, or that they weren't even of a species, that they were gods meant to conquer a planet. All your warmongering comes from that. But that's just 10,000 years old. So what I'm saying, about 300,000 years, yeah, you had people fighting. There were fights. There was violence. There's death, even murder, no doubt. But you know what else there were? There was dinner parties. Family, friends, dinner parties. Fashion. You had fashion. Fashion was a thing. Music. That's older than civilized culture. What, you think people didn't play games? Think people didn't tell stories? Of course people had dinner parties. And yeah, while there were fights and violence, you know what they didn't have? They didn't have war criminals. Because they didn't have war. They didn't have prisons. And because they didn't have war, I mean, they had fights and battles and everything, but I mean, no one was trying to conquer a friggin' continent or a world. Otherwise, they would have. And maybe I'll talk about that tomorrow. But they would have. They had plenty of time. Look at North America there for a while. Plenty of time. Plenty of time for, and there were full-time agriculturalists in North America. And they had a socio-economic hierarchy in their culture as well. And they got all of their calories from agriculture, from the regrowth of their favorite foods. The Hohokam. That's not even their real name. Nobody knows what their real name is. Because they were gone by the time Europeans got to the continent. 1,450 years, approximately. The Hohokam existed in the southwest North America. The agriculturalists, but not farmers. We know this. We know they weren't farmers because not everybody lived like them in North America. I mean, they got all of their calories, 100% of their calories came from crops, from agriculture, from regrowing their favorite food. But yeah, I think it's wrong to call them farmers. Because we know what farmers do. When farmers get somewhere, when farmers start doing their thing somewhere, they make everybody do it. Because farmers eventually found their way to North America. Went from Europe, right? And we know what happened after that. I mean, you don't talk about it much. You don't call it genocide very often. You don't really call it out. It's more like a progress thing. You know, listen to the Chris Rock routine on who's got it bad. And who should be doing the complaining? So, and we know that farming is holy war agriculture. We know civilized culture has spread by way of genocide and slavery. Always, wherever it has gone on the planet, which is everywhere now, right? All over the globe. So, 10,000 years of genocide and slavery, and now, you're still doing it. 8 billion of you caught in a stampede. Doing everything you can to convert as much of the biomass of Earth into human flesh as fast as you possibly can. That's civilized culture. This constant risk of wider war. Oh, this guy's really going out on a limb, huh? Certainly, the aftermath of this strike. Of course, risk of wider war. Just say wider war, okay? Because there are 8 billion of you warmongers now. And look, you may love peace. You may be a nonviolent person, love peace and everything, but you ever buy something packaged in plastic? You're part of the war. And we don't need to pick on plastic. I mean, this was going on long before the petroleum industry. 10,000 years of this war going. So, yeah, risk of wider war. All right, if you got something to say, if you got complaints, questions, comments, www.doomsymcdoomscroller.com.